Alright. Whoa, this is a whopper. Holy shit. This is a big meaty juicer right here. By Rory. Rory, you fucking legend. I love you, buddy. I love you. 2.6 includes a long list of changes to game balance. Our primary intent is to better enable a larger selection of powerful build types and skill choices. Many of the more extreme changes to core systems have been held until Fall of Oriath's beta, while 2.6 will have a stronger focus on improving underused passives, weapon types, unique items and skills, with a focus on their threshold jewels. These changes will all combine to create a large selection of new builds to try out. So just to kind of like reiterate on that point, 3.0's major systems changes. So well, that'll be double dipping, we know that already. I expect if we're gonna see things like life versus CI addressed at a more substantial level, that'll be in 3.0 as well, because that could be like, we could see some like base mechanic changes or something, maybe to defensive mechanics or something. We shall see, but first, 2.6 improvements to the passive tree. Various improvements to specific clusters and locations of passives have been made, making areas which weren't taken frequently more efficient and opening up some new options for builds. Some physical to cold conversion has been added to the passive tree near ranger area. This allows for skills like Ice Shot and Frostblades to have more conversion to cold than ever before. So you can get elemental conversion now on the passive tree, rather than just on uniques or through gems. A new weapon elemental damage cluster has been added to the passive tree near ranger. This now allows for dexterity aligned characters who specialize in elemental attack skills to invest more points into their damage. Now this is interesting because there is strong options for elemental stuff for things like ranges and shadows, and I guess duelers to a lesser extent, but mostly ranges and shadows. And even some of the ascendancy support that, but the passive tree didn't really support that very much. There's a little bit of weapon early down the bottom right, but that was about it. Some of these changes and some of the other ones that I've seen while at GGG are very much supporting that, so that's very good to see. That is very good to see. The area between the Shadow and Ranger has been made more efficient and less restrictive, while also improving the efficiency of clusters in that section of the tree. I believe Revenge of the Hunted from Emery was made stronger. So Revenge of the Hunted's pathing was changed. I think there was 2 access points to it now, and I think that one of the nodes was buffed, the major node, I think, if I remember correctly. That's all subject to change though. The thick skin cluster now attaches to the outside perimeter in that image we saw a little bit ago. Did that open? There it is. Sexy as, man. These are the stairs of the passive tree. Just like Act 1 got stairs, so too did the passive tree. This is very needed. It was so frustrating to play want to play like a sword build or an evasion build and come down this bottom side of the tree. Be going down this bottom side of the tree for whatever reason you wanted to because you build, but then you have to go back up around and get the life because you need to, because you need all the life in this section of the tree. So now you can actually path through both sides, which is fantastic. It's still more efficient from the it's more efficient from the top side now, because it's only 2 points to get this if you just want to pick up the major node instead of 3, but all the points to go from the bottom side, but you're still able to get that life, which is very juicy. That indeed is a big meaty juicer. Mana has been added behind Mind Over Matter. Make Mom great again! Allowing for those builds to be better than ever before, and perhaps some Legacy Cloak of the Defiance action as well for 40% Mind Over Matter. Yeah, though, I don't know why you'd get the Mind Over Matter node and run it. Would you run it just for the 10%? Probably not. Maybe some Hierophant for his Mind Over Matter stuff. Mind Over Matter's not going to be... We'll see. We'll see. If it's a lot of mana, if it's a juicy amount of mana, then maybe Mind Over Matter might be worth using a bit more. Some claw staff and sword passives have received some special attention and should now be more powerful overall. Something that I can recall is that staves were getting global crit chance and crit multi, so that they're more solidly either spellcaster or melee, like they work for both. So they should be a lot more flexible now. And pretty juicy amounts from what I remember too, as well as a few other bits and pieces. It looked like the stave stuff is improving quite a lot. The Vitality Void and Spirit Void cluster near Jeweler's starting area that grants life and mana leads to attack damage has been rearranged, and is now also attached to the outside perimeter path. So there's a link to the outside of that. Much like the life cluster, so you can get down through the leech now, or access the leech from the bottom. The sword critical cluster has been made part of the ranger's larger exterior sword cluster. So That little, let's pull it up here, and I can probably like reference some of these things as we go here to show you guys. So Fatal Blade, this cluster. So what's been happening is this has been moved down, it's connected here, this has been moved to this area, and then these nodes and the power from these nodes has been moved into this cluster. So that's all in the one cluster now, so that's a juicy cluster now. The Master Fletcher bow cluster between Ranger and Duelist has been removed, and the Avatar of the Hunt cluster has been moved to its old location. Master Fletcher up here. Okay, so these ones, like, yeah, you fairly infrequently get these dudes because they're just not all that good. So that's been removed, and Avatar of the Hunt has been put up there. Okay. I'm guessing some of its power has been absorbed by other nodes, perhaps. Leech effects in the shadow area of the tree now leech from all attack damage, not just physical attack damage. Oh man, oh man, oh. That's so good because, I mean, how often do you want to play like a elemental shadow build and there's only physical leech in the tree, even though shadow has a lot of elemental stuff going on in the tree. Shadow is either physical or elemental, it's not just the one. So you got physical line, and we've got the elemental line. But we only had physical leech, so that's become attack leech now, so that is pretty juicy. There's a lot of juiciness going on here, guys. I told you guys you'd like what you saw from the passive tree. I think you guys will like it quite a bit. Lightning clusters, arcing blows, and crackling speed have been combined, and arcing speed has been improved. Arcing blows, crackling speed, arcing speed. Sounds legit. Master of Force, the physical cluster in the Scion area, and Ash, Frost, and Storm, the elemental cluster in the Scion area, now grant a small value of reduced reflect damage taken of their type. I did notice that, so you can get reflect mitigation on the passive tree now. It is a very small amount. I think it's like, think like 10% or something like that, but enough to take the edge off so that maybe your leech can take care of you. So some added ways of dealing with reflect. There you go, pretty cool shit. Many other changes have been made to pathing, positioning, and values to improve underused passive skills. They didn't actually talk too much about one-handed stuff, but I think there was a little bit more than that. There was a bit more than what it sounds like here, sprinkled around the tree, little smaller changes too. So that is pretty, you guys guessed it, juicy. Elemental conversion. Some unique items that converted elemental damage to other elemental damage types have had their conversion values lowered to increase the opportunity cost of total element-to-element conversion. I guess kind of collaborating with the passive tree additions of those things. Converting spells to other damage types was so easy with Pyre and Call of the Brotherhood that it compromised elemental identity for many skills. I agree with that statement. That is too true, because how many times were you like, I'm gonna play a cold build, and then what's the meme? Every single cold build becomes a fire build. Because why? Well, because then you can do it so efficiently that you end up with more damage because of scaling both damage types, and then you get ignites.
What in God's name is that?
So now you might actually consider playing Vortex as a cold skill, for example. We've made it slightly easier to convert more physical damage to elemental damage for some attack skills. Frostblades and Ice Shot now have 60% fizz to cold, up from 40. Wild Strike now converts 100% of physical damage to a random element. Okay. Unique item, so harder to change elements to each other, but easy to change physical to elements. So if you want to play like a full cold Ice Shot build, that's going to be a lot easier. Not that, like, that wasn't hard because the secondary conversion was already full anyway, but I guess like Frostblades is a better example. Unique item rebalance, over 100 unique items rebalance, holy shit. With a focus on improving underused uniques that didn't have a strong role in the game. That includes ones from old leagues as well. We've tried to make sure that all the uniques either have a positive impact on leveling characters, act as a good item to wield when first entering maps, or have a defined role for endgame characters. Yes, there were definitely some uniques that didn't fit into any of those categories, huh? We've got more changes coming in the future, but we've managed to make changes to a significant number of old uniques. That's going to be really exciting, finding uniques and then... Because you're just used to finding certain uniques and just be like, alright, just vendor it without even looking at it. Now you're going to want to take a look at them and be like, hold on, has this changed? Is this actually good now? I bet there's going to be like hundreds of uniques vended that people assume are vendor trash and all of a sudden have become valuable or decent. We shall see, that should be interesting. Here's some one-handed stuff. One-handed weapons were seeing very little use outside of daggers and specific one-handed skills. They made Blade Flurry. To improve player choice, we've increased the base damage of many one-handed weapon types across the board. Daggers now have lower implicit value. This will also apply to already existing dagger implicits. Oh! Loath Bane, Shrek'd. Not really, but slightly. Previously, daggers granted 40, 60, or 80. His value's been changed to 30, 40, or 50. So, dagger crit implicit is weaker. So to reduce the impact specific bases types had on weapon choices. So GG is saying too many people using daggers just for the implicit. Although I would argue many people are using them just for whirling blades, but we shall see. Lower the power of the standout critical caster weapon base type. Yeah, okay. So there's a bit more of a decision between going raw damage, I guess. Lower level claw base types that granted life leech now grant life on hit. That's a good idea because at low level life leech does absolutely nothing. As life leech has very little effect at low levels, there you go. Maybe I should just read the rest of the sentence. Maracleth Claw bases, Double Claw, Twin Claw, Gemini Claw, now have separate life and mana on hit values as they now grant more life on hit. Ah, okay, so rather than going like 12 and 12, or 12 life and mana on hit, it's might be like 20 life and 12 mana or something. Interesting. Maracraft thrusting swords have a higher chance to bleed, going from 8 to 12 to 15 to 20. I've not even seen them used at all. Thrusting swords have a lower critical multiplier value. Other thrusting swords. One-handed maces now grant stun threshold at 10 to 15 rather than stun duration at 20 to 40 to increase their ability to stun. Whew. I thought GG was pretty nervous about adding more ability to stun. I guess they feel more confident now they added the boss anti-stun mechanics, but I've still seen bosses get perma-stunned. All staves have had their block values increased. Previously, staves granted either 12 or 18, and now have 18 or 20. 18 and 20. Very little difference between the two bases, then. Rather than 6, only 2% difference. But that's pretty juicy. 20% block on a start? That's pretty nice. Staves looking more attractive. That's good. For so long, they've been relegated to the... Well, sometimes you might need a 6-link. +3 6-link or something. Or hegemonies. Almost half the one-handed and two-handed sword base types now grant flat accuracy, instead of increased accuracy. This should make them more desirable for characters that naturally have high accuracy rating from dexterity. That is very good. That means you don't necessarily need to get an accuracy roll in your helmet or gloves or whatnot. That's pretty nice. Area effect changes. I think this is going to be the one area that's going to make people sad. We'll see. All sources of increased radius of area skills have been replaced with an increased area. This means that rather than the area of the skill increasing exponentially as the player invests into modifier it to area scale, the radius gained per point of the stat will be lower and lower as heavy investment occurs, similar to diminishing returns. Many old radius increases that have been changed to area increases provide a higher numeric value to compensate for this change. Many old radiuses increase that have been changed. So some of the sources of area of effect increases have been buffed. So maybe some passives are larger amounts now, but stacking more total of them does less. So less investment to get a bit of AoE, more investment to get a lot of AoE. Basically, the goal of this change is to make investing in the size of your area skills to be less exponentially rewarding the more you invest, so players don't feel like they need to gather every single point of area radius to reach their character's full potential. Okay, that sounds heartbreaking. That sounds heartbreaking, because people, I mean, we love our AoE, don't we? It might not be that bad in practicality, though, because if the result of this is that, for example, you only have to get the Witch cluster or the Templar cluster, and not both to have like a viable endgame build, then that actually might be nice, because there were plenty of times when I'm playing an AoE spellcaster, for example, and I go into the Templar area pretty much just because I want the AoE. And if I didn't have that, I might do more stuff over in Shadow. More interesting things over in Shadow, for example. So, like, get shit tons of a crit. So that could be okay. That might lessen point strain on AoE skill builds, potentially. It's also a bit of a nerf to Dying Sun, isn't it? Because typically with Dying Sun you've already got a bunch of AoE. But Dying Sun's still going to be amazing with projectile AoE skills though. Okay. An example of how this change will work, with the map mod that granted increased radius of boss skills previously granted 40% increased area of effect radius, and now granted 100% increased area, which results in approximately the same increased area. Okay, that's interesting. It's a very interesting tidbit of information. So 100% AoE is now the equivalent of 40% AoE at the roughly equivalent of 40% under the old system. So we can assume then that some of the passives and uniques and stuff that grant area of effect are going to be significantly larger then. This is not like a linear thing though, right? Because that means like 50 isn't going to be the same as 20. Because it seems to be a kind of a diminishing return system. It'd be interesting to see I hope someone can like plot, once we get a bit more info on this, plot like a graph that shows the relationship between the two. That might be nice. As many lower level skills don't have as high a base area, they will now receive additional flat bonus to radius at certain levels of the gem. Ooh, that's juicy. That's very nice. That means you're gonna just get AoE by leveling your gems, particularly while leveling your characters when you can't yet invest into AoE on the tree and so forth. That's gonna be really nice. An example is Blight, which gains 1+ area radius every 5 levels of the gem. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I like that. I've kind of always wanted that. I've always wanted AoE skills to gain a bit of AoE as they level. Well, at least some of them too.
What type of tea would you like?
Whatever's going. Rubus. Thanks. Cheers. All values of curse radius and aura radius were doubled when converted to curse aura area size to result in a similar change. So they're trying to preserve curse radius and aura radius. They don't really want that. I guess that they're saying they're happy with those already. They don't really want these changes to affect those too much. Another notable change, Melee Splash now gains significantly more increased area than it did increased radius as the gem levels, bringing it much closer to equivalent area skills. Equivalent area skills? What is an equivalent area skill to Melee Splash? Like Cleave or something? Well, if it results in Melee Splash being bigger, I'm all for it. Well, so as I was saying, I think this is going to be the area that people might be a little sad or salty about. It sounds like it could be reasonable. Hopefully we aren't losing too much fun in our skills. Hopefully the fun we gain from build planning improvements is nicer here. And like, this is... we need Chris Wilson quote at the end being like, this is a buff. Or this is a nerf at the end, because it's very much like, okay, so the system for area of effect is changing. It sounds like we're not going to be able to get quite as much AoE like at the upper echelons as we were before, like the insane investment screen-sized AoEs, but getting decent AoE is going to be easier. So it's the great balancer. AoE is not going to be only for the 1%ers now. The plebeians will also be able to afford sustainable AoE. Housing, something. I don't know. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out. It might not be terrible. It might actually be decent if, as I said, we don't have to go into both AoE clusters. Like, it's kind of mandatory, right? If you're playing an AoE skill right now, to go into both AoE clusters. So, if that's not mandatory anymore, because now it's not worth doing it because of the diminishing returns, then that might actually be quite nice. Alright, skill balance adjustments. Here we go. This could be interesting. Nerfs and buffs! Nerfs and buffs! I'm excited to see what's in there. A small number of skills have had their damage values adjusted. Damage increases have been applied to 2 skills that were satisfied with the mechanics of, but felt like they didn't deal enough damage. Sunder now deals more damage with its direct hit, but less damage with its secondary area effects. Okay. Yeah, I don't know about that. Sunder definitely needed a little bit of love to kind of like, because it was kind of like Earthquake's scrawny cousin, right? That Earthquake always picks on. You guys know. We all had that cousin. Or maybe you were that cousin. Ice Crash has had its damage increased. That's nice and simple. I don't know how this is going to work out, though, for Sunder. It means that it's more likely that this is going to be... You don't need to run an additional single target skill. I haven't seen too many Sunder builds to know if they tend to do that. It's a leveling skill, though. I mean, this might make it a decent leveling skill. Like, it might improve its survivability as a leveling skill. I don't know, it'd be interesting to see what sort of endgame impacts that have. A damage reduction has been applied to one skill that dealt significantly more damage than all skills of its type. Guess what? Especially after one-handed weapon changes. Blade Flurry has had its damage reduced. As I was saying yesterday, with their plans to buff one-handers, it was going to be mandatory for them to buff Blade Flurry. Sorry, nerf Blade Flurry. However, because it was the one that made one-handers look good when they actually weren't. What's going to be interesting to see is if this nerf is just compensating for the one-hander buffs to keep the power level about the same, because, you know, one-handers go up, Blade Flurry goes up with them, they nerf Blade Flurry back down to where it was. Or if they're nerfing it so much so that it goes down to below where it was, which maybe was needed. So we'll have to wait for patch notes to see exactly how much. I guarantee this is going to happen though. Even if the Blade Flurry nerf is reasonable, like let's say they take current Blade Flurry and nerf to like 10%, right? Nobody would really freak out. They'd be like, yeah, okay, fair enough. That's probably warranted. But what happens with these changes, they end up nerfing it by like 30% or something like that. And it's the same nerf. It's that same 10% nerf as what it would be. But if they say 30%, people are going to be like, Blade Flurry nerf by 30%? I guarantee something like that will happen. You mark my words, chat. Mark my words. 2 Vile Auras have been reduced in power. Vile Haste now grants slightly lower, I thought that was going to say significantly, slightly lower values of attack, cast, and move speed. Vile Discipline no longer grants any bonus energy shield. Oh! Oh, Vile Discipline. Oh, shit. There you go. Starting to address that life versus CI balance, eh? So Vile Discipline is now an ES healing skill. Still very strong because like that constant recharge is very good, but the massive amount of energy shield you were getting was a big part of like people just like kind of easily face tanking one-shot bosses and stuff. That's a big juicy meat, that one. Oh, buddy. That is juicy. Get pooped on, CI. Get pooped on. Oh, man. Wow. Chris, where's that old image of Chris dressed as Thor slamming down Mjolnir? Mew. That is, whew. That is juicy. So, yeah, it's going to be a sustained skill, as it was still as it is used currently, but not necessarily a one-shot avoidance setup. More so than ES already has. I don't know. What do you guys think? That sounds like it's a pretty juicy big nerf. What do you guys think? Reasonable? I'm kind of thinking that that might be justifiable. Thank you for my tea. Yeah, I'll leave it for a bit. Level 21 Vile Discipline 2C. Wait, what does levels even do of it now? What does leveling Vile Discipline now do now? All these people with like level 21 Vile Disciplines. Good nerf. Take that, CI. I think it's very fair, warranted, fine, over nerf. I'm fucking pissed for both nerfs. CI is dead. It's good for the end game, just fine. ES could still get nerfed more and be fine. You pop it for the insta 3k regen per second still. Oh yeah, Vile Discipline's still like insanely strong, having recharge active through combat, as we know from Occultist and Vile Discipline. But yeah, that's a juicy one. The Vile Haste nerf is like, yeah, I mean, these are the two most used Vile skills by a big margin, and the fact that these exist often means that people don't use any of the other Vile skills, even if they have one that is kind of on theme for their build. So I've been thinking that like something like this has kind of been in the works for a long time, because we just don't have any valid skill diversity. Like your CI attack builds or CI spellcasters, what do? Like they run haste and discipline, right? Just clear speed and stay alive, and they never ever touch any of the other val skills. So maybe we'll see a little bit more other val skill, and this is obviously like a bit of a clear speed nerf. Everyone's always complaining about clear speed meta. So I don't know, like people should be happy about that, but we'll see. Then again, at the same time, people don't like losing speed at all. There'll be many more changes to skills coming in 3.0 as part of Fall of Oriath's beta. Well, there you go. So, like cool, I guess. Change? Don't know if a buff, maybe a buff. I think it's intended to be a buff, so it'll probably end up being a bit of a buff. Ice Crash buff. Okay, cool. The two competitors with Earthquake basically trying to be brought up to be more competitive with Earthquake. Blade Flurry nerf, totally expected. It'll be interesting to see how much it pans out to. And then I didn't like expect to see those in here, but I think they both make sense. And that one's pretty juicy, man. That one's pretty juicy. So, results of this analysis, I mean, maybe we'll see a little bit more of these skills used. I think Sunder will only be used by people who just don't like Earthquake still. I don't know if any like little buffs to Sunder are going to see it used over Earthquake because it's stronger. Unless it receives a massive buff, but they said like they deal... Didn't they say damage values adjusted? It doesn't say by how much. It could be a big buff. Ice Crash, I don't see ever being used over Earthquake, but that'll be nice for like people that want to play Face Breakers and not be War Chief, for example. Ice Crash has been okay for ages, but just Earthquake came out, it was like, oh, okay, so it's got triple the AoE and double the damage of Ice Crash? Well, okay. And, I mean, in some cases, full physical damage, so you get better leech and so on. You can go poison and things like that. Yeah. Alright, here's the final section, Threshold Jewels, which I'm quite excited about. For the majority of Threshold Jewels, the opportunity cost of having to take otherwise inefficient passive skills made the jewels too costly for their effect. All Threshold Jewels now require 40 of their chosen attribute to be available in the area, and no longer required to be allocated. So, instead of needing 50 points allocated, like with my current build right here, so you won't need to do this. You won't need to do any of this. You can just pop in here and be like, oh, okay, there's 40 dexterity in radius here. Easy, you don't need to allocate any of that. And then Volley Fire will be active. So if you didn't want to pick up Acuity, for example, you won't need to, since the dexterity will be in the zone. So that is, that's pretty juicy. However, there's a little bit more happening here, so let's have a look. Many have a maximum number of jewels of that type that can be socketed, so that is the drawback, is that you can't potentially stack, because the stacking the stackability of them has been made easier, right? Lower investment, and 40 instead of 50 means that they can go in more spots than they could before potentially. So now there are maximums, letting us be more generous with powerful effects that would be problematic if you could fill a large portion of the tree with them. So they're like things like the Freeze Pulse one, for example, that was revealed, which adds extra projectiles. They wouldn't want you to be able to stack like multiples of those, I guess. I don't know if that'd be overpowered though, but that is the idea. They can make more powerful ones and just limit them to one and still have them be a threshold jewel. You guess Volley Fire gets a limit of 2. I know people typically use 3 Volley Fires. I think 2, like, we could probably work with 2 though, especially if you're factoring in that it's going to be lower investment. So if I didn't have to grab these and these, and I didn't have to invest in the extra like points around to make sure that I can get this one as well, then I can allocate those points to damage or something like that, and it might end up still being decent even if it is limited to 2. But 2 could happen. They could just limit it to 3 and it'd be the same as it is now, just better. Let's have a look at some of the specific examples here. Some existing threshold jewels have had their values adjusted, some now have additional effects. Yeah, I like the additional effects, like the new ones that they revealed have 2 effects each on them, which is cool, a bit more interesting. We plan to make further changes to Threshold Jewels as part of the beta for 3.0. Heavy Strike's Threshold Jewel now grants 20% chance for double damage and is limited to 2. What is, let's have a look at the current one, because I don't even know, right? I don't even know what it's called. They didn't even, like, name it. It's just, like, Heavy Strikes. Threshold Jewel... What's the Threshold Jewel, man? Weight of the Empire. 10% chance to deal double damage. So that's literally just been doubled then. Okay. So you can get up to 40% now just from 2. So that's like getting 40% crit in quotation marks, in very loose quotation marks, for 2 gems. I mean, it's kind of good. I don't know. I'd still like, the issue is probably still this part. you know? This part might still be the issue. But it's definitely a buff. Viper Strike's Threshold Jewel now also grants 10% chance to gain Unholy Might on hit per poison stack on the enemy. So 10 stacks you're guaranteed Holy Might. I mean, you're going to get it before that. Like, that's like 3-4-ish attacks you're probably going to get Unholy Might most of the time. That's juicy. Unholy Might's like 20% out of counts, isn't it? %. Holy shit, it's 30%. I thought it was 20%. Fuck. Damn, that's pretty good. See, the Viper Strike Jewel, I was always pretty meh on. Even though I played a Viper Strike build, I didn't use the Viper Strike Jewel, right? So that should tell you something. Because I was like, I mean, I can do this, or I can just add a jewel that adds like a significant amount of more damage and I don't have to do 100 attacks before the Threshold Jewel ends up being better than just a regular rare jewel. So most cases, regular rare jewels ended up being better than Viper Strike's Threshold Jewel, but as a way of getting Unholy Might, which is not that easy to get, that's limited to like a few unique items and certainly stuff that I wasn't using on my Viper Strike build, that's quite nice. It means that you can also use Viper Strike as like a single target with one of these suckers. And then you know, just use it to proc a buff as well if you want to, for your other skill, for your clearing skill. Yeah, like before you might have been using Death's Hand or something, but a lot of builds didn't do that. They weren't going, like my non-crit Viper Striker, for example, wasn't using Death's Hand. Unholy Might, 30% damage buff. Oh, the old Viper Striker is going to be so juicy now, man. I'll take that. It could definitely use 30% more damage. Alright, 30% out of cows. That's very nice. Cool too. That's a cool change. I like that a lot. Vigilant Strike Threshold Jewel now grants allies Fortify for 20 seconds up for 3 seconds and is limited to 1. Vigilant Strike had a Threshold Jewel? Sorry. So, support skill. Also fortifies nearby allies for 3 seconds. Yeah, that's pretty useless. That was a thing? This existed? I didn't even know that existed. Well, there you go. It sounds like it might actually be a viable support skill now if you're playing as a support character. Run up and bop an enemy for with Vigilant Strike just to give everyone Fortify. I mean, that'll be helpful if you're supporting a group of like spellcasters or something that are using bows. But it'll be useful if you're like supporting a group of bow characters and non-melee using spellcasters, wanders perhaps. That's so that will be like a little cute extra tool in the support character toolbox. A lot of characters that want Fortify can run it themselves anyway, but and you wouldn't want to rely on someone else for your Fortify most of the time. But as an added bonus to a party, that's kind of nice, I guess. 3 seconds was certainly useless. What the hell was this, Jewel, man? I can't believe this is a thing. 8 to 15%. So at the cost of a jewel socket and the extra nodes allocated around it, 8 to 15% armor and 3 second fortify for your allies when you've used Vigilant Strike. So you basically have to constantly use Vigilant Strike to keep it up on people. What the fuck? That was so useless. Well, let's say, I think we can call that a warranted and uncontroversial buff. What do you guys think? So they'll reveal the full patch notes a few days before it launches on March 3rd. Due to the number of changes being made, all players will receive a one-time full passive reset at that time. Awesome stuff. Overall, pretty sweet. I reckon pretty good stuff. As I said, some people might be disappointed with the AoE stuff a little bit, and some people might be disappointed with the Vile nerfs, but the buff to nerf ratio here is off the charts, man. ZiggyD are well within the nerf budget. They because, you know, in order to keep the community happy, right, you gotta be like, yeah, we really need to nerf these things, guys. And I'm like, okay, well, let's take a few of them, and then, like, buff these other things, and then just, like, you know, this many nerfs, and then this many buffs. Yeah, just kind of like that. And then people are like, okay, that looks okay. I can, okay, ZiggyD, I'll allow it. I'll allow it. It sounds like pathing around the tree. I'm very interested to, like, really sit down and kind of like plan builds on the new tree. But it sounds like pathing through the tree is going to be a lot more flexible as well. We're going to be able to use this, particularly the bottom right hand side here, we're going to be able to use this outside run a lot more. We don't necessarily need to always go through this section of duelist. We have to go down here and grab these clusters more easily as non-duelist builds. That should be pretty nice. I think a pretty good set of balance changes. Very juicy manifesto right here. So there we go. Pretty cool shit, guys. Pretty cool shit. I'm going to take a break for a couple minutes. I hope you guys enjoyed my run through and analysis of the content update. I think 2.6 is going to be a kick-ass league, man. The league stones, like the actual legacy stuff, it's going to be juicy as, and it seems like a pretty good set of balance changes. It's been so long since I've had anything like this, so I don't know if I'm just like desperate for interesting balance changes to shake things up a bit. I don't know how much this is going to shake things up. Not in any dramatic fashion, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think this is going to be like when ascendancy classes are added or anything. It's not going to like completely change heaps of builds, but this might make kind of like bring a few more builds up that were just not quite good enough before to make them playable and make planning builds a little more enjoyable, that sort of thing. And that's pretty good. That's pretty good.